Dear students, for your final year, you have two papers. The first paper is the paper on world history, dating from 1453 to 1815. And the second paper is on the history of Telangana, and it is from ancient times to 1724. So the history of Telangana can be divided into three parts. We will take it as ancient period, and then medieval period, and then modern period. And we will just try to understand. So for your fifth semester, we have the history of Telangana from ancient times to 1724. So this is your paper 1A. So in this paper, the first unit that we have for your study is on sources for the study of Telangana history, and then geographical features of Telangana region, and then the age of Satavahanas, where we will have to study the administration, society, economy, trade, commerce, culture, etc. under the or during the period of the Satavahanas. So this is your first unit. The first unit consists of basically two main points, the two main parts. The first part being the sources for the study of Telangana history, and then the second part focuses on the period and times of Satavahanas. So before we go into the details of the ancient period of Telangana, first let us get some idea on the region of Telangana. So the first point that I want you to look at is a map of Telangana, which you have it here. This is the state which was formed under the directions of the central government, and you have a bill being passed in the parliament on 7th February 2014, and after that the state was bifurcated on June 2nd, and the Telangana state was formed. And then the existing districts were further subdivided. You can see all the districts of the present Telangana state on this slide. So now when we are trying to understand the history of Telangana, when we try to take this region into consideration, first thing that we'll have to see is what were the sources. So we will go into the details of the sources at a later stage, but suffice here is to say that the main sources are the ruins of the several dynasties which have ruled here or this particular region from ancient times. So the buildings or the temples or any kind of pillars, coins, etc., all this will come under to this category. Then you have inscriptions which are made on rock and which have stood the test of time. And then you have copper inscriptions found in various parts of this Telangana state. And apart from this, you have the royal dignitaries who have maintained some kind of records of their dynasties and their rule and the kind of welfare measures that they have taken up, and the kind of impact that their rule had on the contemporary period. So we can categorize the sources like this. And when we go into the details, before going into the details of these sources, we will discuss it at length in more when we are trying to take up the history of Satavahanas, where we'll again have to study the sources. So instead of duplicating, I'll put all the details of the sources when we are dealing the Telangana history. Suffice here to say that when we are talking of sources, we look into this region which you can see on the map, for ruins, inscriptions, copper coins, and sources of royal proclamations or royal rulings, etc. So if you take from ancient period, right from the Satavahana period, if you come down to the medieval period from the times of Nizams or Asad Zahis, you have some kind of recorded information which is available to us. And all this become the sources for the study of the region of this part, which we call the Telangana history. The history of Telangana comes under the category of regional history, which is a part of the main framework of Indian history. So before going into other details, I just want you to see some more. And this is a slide which is giving you an idea of the soil. The different colors that you can see, or the different shades that you can see, is the kind of different soils that are there. And these soils you call as incept soils, empty soils, venti soils, sandy soils, moil soils, rock outcrop, water bodies, etc., settlements, etc. So this is the way you find the soil, and this region is very rich in its soil orders, and this has been one of the reasons why different dynasties over a period of time, starting from the period of Satavahanas down to the Nizams, try to bring this particular region or make this particular region a part of their empire. So the soil plays a very important role in making an attempt to bring that particular part of region or make that particular part of region as a part of their empire. So you have in the Deccan Plateau, this is a very important region where you have different kinds of soils, where you have different kinds of agricultural crops coming up. So it was rich in soils, it was rich in rivers also. I will show you another slide. And here you can see the rich resources of the Telangana region. Almost 45% is spread as soil, and you can see the different the light shade is an open forest and the thick shade is a dense forest. And apart from that, you have major irrigational projects which are underway, and some of them are the Pranahita Chevela lift irrigation project, and the Kantapalli lift irrigation project, the Devadula lift irrigation scheme, etc. I'm just giving you all this information to have a idea of the region about which the historical antecedents we are trying to or going to examine. Similarly, there are some statistics available for you on the agricultural production and minor irrigation projects and the catchment areas of major rivers. You can find that Krishna is 68% and Godavari is 79%. This is the basic region. You just see the catchment areas of the major rivers, 68 and 79%. This is one of the main reasons why right from the Satavahanas down to Vijayanagara Empire, down to Asaf Zahis, down to the Nizams, the region between the Krishna Godavari, or what you call the deltas of the Krishna Godavari, played a very important role. Even the sultanates of the Deccan region always made an attempt to bring these regions under this control. So we can very clearly say that the geography plays an important role. The geography of a region plays very important role in the form of rich resources that are available in that region, the soils of the region, the different rivers, and the inundated lands. All this play an important role in shaping the history of that particular region. So the Telangana also has a rich history and a rich culture coming down from the times of Satavahanas. So when in this paper, we will be trying to focus more on in the fifth semester, our focus will be primarily on the region and the kind of sources that are available in this region for the study of this region. And apart from that, we will also see the kind of wars that took place here, the kind of governments that developed here, the various dynasties that have emerged here, their period, and how they contributed for the economic and social development of this particular region. So this is going to be your area of study for this particular period. And the next slide that I'm going to show you is the various inscriptions and coins that have revealed the history of this region. So I have tabulated it as dynasty inscriptions and place where the coins were found. So the first dynasty, see, in fact, these are the sources. So you just make a note of it. And these sources are the sources of the, for the study of these dynasties. And these are the dynasties which we are going to examine when we are trying to understand the history of ancient history of the Telangana region. So the first and the most important region dynasty is the Satavahanas. We also have a history of this region before the Satavahanas, which we can have an idea as a prehistory from the times of prehistory, but we are starting from, as our syllabus starts from the period of Satavahanas and the sources for the study of Telangana history. I'm also trying to explain to you the history of this region from the times of Satavahanas. So one of the first most powerful dynasty which has roots in this particular region is the Satavahana dynasty. And they were imperialists. The imperialists in this context, I mean, they have extended their empire to vast regions. You can see the inscriptions were found at Nasik, Nanaghat, Junagadh, Kanheri, Hathingumfa, Gumfali, Gina, Ganjam, and other areas also. So these were the areas which had come under those controls. So the inscriptions were indicate that these were the areas which were a part of the Satavahana empire. So similarly, we can also see that when we look at the coins that are available for this particular period, you have the Kotilingala, you have the Kondapur, you have Pedda Bankur, you have Pune, you have Warangal, Hyderabad, and Kadampur, and Eleshwaram, and Suryapet. So all these regions, we have found some coins which indicate that there was some kind of a trade and commerce, growth of trade and commerce in these regions. So when we're trying to study the history of the Satavahanas, we will excessively depend on these inscriptions and the coins that were available from this particular period to construct the socio-economic and cultural history of the Satavahana period. So this will be the first dynasty we will be taking up. And here we will be trying to understand the kind of administration that the Satavahanas built up, the kind of society that had developed in this particular period, the culture of the Satavahanas, and the way they have promoted the kingdom or turned the kingdom into a welfare state. So these are some of our areas where we have to examine and understand when we are trying to understand the history of the Satavahanas, which is, we can say, the starting at the beginning point in trying to understand the history, the dynastic history of this particular region. So next to Satavahanas, we have the Ikshvakus, and this was also a very powerful dynasty. And you have Nagarjuna Konda, I mean, inscriptions that are available in Nagarjuna Konda, Kesarapalli, Gurjala, Jaggayapeta, Vegi, Ramireddy, Aluru, Gumanaraluru, Uppagonduru. All these are regions where you find, and very interestingly, most of these regions are in the present Andhra Pradesh, which clearly means that they had control, the Ikshvakus had control over the coastal regions of South India also. They were also big imperialists. And if you just happen to visit Nagarjuna Konda, you can find evidences of the fact that they had overseas trade contacts also, where you have some Greek coins available in a golden casket on the Nagarjuna Konda, which speaks of the kind of trade and commerce, extensive trade and commerce that they had, Ikshvakus, during that period. So this is the next important dynasty that we are going to examine. And the places where the coins were found are the Fanigiri in Nalgonda district and Nelakondapalli in Khammam district. So the availability of coins in distant regions indicate the extent and the spread of the trade and commerce of the particular period. So the coins that are available in the period are very important when you're trying to reconstruct the economic history of the particular dynasty. Similarly, the inscriptions become very important in trying to understand the political culture, the political power of the dynasty, and the kind of social systems that prevailed, and the synchronization between the political system and the social system. So all these aspects help us to, and in some cases, even the cultural patterns can be understood when we are trying to study the inscriptions. So inscriptions help us to study the social and cultural and political history, while the coins available for that period over vast stretches of region indicate or help us to construct the economic history of this particular region. So after Satavahanas and Ikshvakus, the next dynasty which we are going to study is the Rashtrakutas. And the Rashtrakutas are from Koravai, Warangal, which was famous as the first prose inscription of Telangana and a Kondaparthi inscription. So most of the inscriptions and Rashtrakutas inscriptions, they had used certain amount of vernacular also. And these inscriptions give us a complete idea of the social and what do you say, the culture and political history of the Rashtrakutas. Coins of Rashtrakutas are not available. I just overlooked Badami Chalukyas before. Sorry, I made a mistake. After Satavahanas, after Ikshvakus, we'll have to discuss about Vishnu Kundins. And after Vishnu Kundins, we will have to go for that. There was a slight jump. So after Ikshvakus, you have Vishnu Kundins. And these Vishnu Kundins, again, you have them available in Tummalagudem, Hyderabad. The inscriptions on the banks of Musi in Chaitanyapuri, and Prakrit, Chikula, Indra, Palanagar, Copper, Gorantala, Copper, Palamuru inscription. So you can also find that the inscriptions, the metal in which they were available is also mentioned in this table, and coins were also available at Dondapadu, Eleshwaram, Panigiri, Bhuvanagiri, Indrapalanagaram, Kisaragutta, Kondapur, Hyderabad, Karimnagar district. Okay, so the first dynasty is Satavahanas, the second is Ikshvakus, and after Ikshvakus we study about Vishnu Kundins, and after Vishnu Kundins we have Badami Chalukya. From the times of Badami Chalukyas, I was not able to get any kind of coin availability, so that is not mentioned. But the inscriptions I have mentioned here. The Badami Chalukyas inscriptions are available in Eleshwaram, they are available in Gadwal, and most of them are in Sanskrit. In Hyderabad, Karnool, Mahabubnagar, border inscriptions are available. And in here, the inscriptions are with Telugu letters called Rana Vikrama, which was the title of Pulakesin I. Okay, so the Badami Chalukyas, we can have a complete study of this particular period based on the inscriptions that are available to us. So next to Badami Chalukyas, we have the Rashtrakutas. And here when we are talking of the Rashtrakutas, we have the first prose inscriptions of the Telangana region and the Kondaparthi inscription. So these two areas have these inscriptions. See, from the times of Shatavahanas, if you come down, during the period of the Shatavahanas, most of them have been in Sanskrit, which was an elite language. But as time progressed, from the times of Badami Chalukyas, when you are coming down to the Rashtrakutas, you also find inscriptions in Telugu. So the regional language was becoming popular in this particular period, and Telugu as a spoken language was becoming popular in this particular period. As I have told you earlier, we can construct the social, political, and cultural history based on these inscriptions. And after Rashtrakutas, we have Vemulavada, And for the Vemulavada, we have the Kollipara, Kuruvagattu, Nagar Karnool Taluk, Prabhavi, Vemulavada, Karimnagar, Chennur, Kazipet, Dairaghar, Kurkyala inscriptions, etc. And the last one was issued by Janmala Bhalla, and there was poems in it for the first time. Okay, so both the Chalukyas and the Vemulavada, here when we are talking of Chalukyas, we have two categories of Chalukyas. One is the Badami Chalukyas and the other one is the Vemulavada Chalukyas. There is a difference of period between them, and we will discuss when we are taking these dynasties independently. Suffice here it to say that the regions where the inscriptions of Badami Chalukyas are available to the inscriptions, the regions where the Vemulavada Chalukyas inscriptions are available are completely different regions, and this indicates that they had extensive control over this particular region, or the plain that is there between the Godavari and the Krishna plain. So this was a very important plain. The Godavari and Krishna plain was a very important plain, and it was also a rice bowl for a long time. From ancient times, it was a very agriculturally very aggressive land, and I had shown you the different kinds of soils that were available in this region. So there was a lot of agricultural activity during the different periods of these dynasties. Then you also have the Kalyani Chalukyas, and these Kalyani Chalukyas have come from Pedda Kadumur Trade Society and Jagadaka Malla too. A large number were found, and Hanmakonda and Kodam. These are the regions where the inscriptions were found. Based on that, we will be able to construct the history of the Kalyani Chalukyas. And see, these are all the splintered groups or the splintered kingdoms of the Vengi, Chalukyas and the Badami Chalukyas. So here you also have Mudigonda Chalukyas, and again you find Mudigonda Chalukyas inscriptions available at Korvei, Mogula Cheruvu, and Viryara Gudur 1, and Kiruvaka or Kukunur 2. So all these inscriptions help us to study the history of Mudigonda Chalukyas. And then the next one is the Kanduru Chodas, and Anumula and Agamukur. These are the pure Telugu found in theme, and Kolanapaku, Ullala, Nelakondapalli, and Mumbaikars, the Palakulu. These are the areas where you find the inscriptions of this region. So these are the dynasties about which we will be covering in our 5th semester. And after this, we will be taking up the medieval period where you have the Asaf-Zahi dynasty, etc. And the next dynasty, important dynasty that we have is the Rechella Velma or the Padmanayakas. Again, they are the subordinate kings of Kakatiyas. And again, I have given you the regions where the inscriptions are found. They are the Palampet, Pillalamari, Sanauru, El Kurti, Manchapur, etc. So these are the regions where you find the inscriptions. So similarly, you have the Polavasa Raja dynasty, subordinate kings of Kakatiyas, and you have them available at Govindapur in Narsampet, and Banajipet and Palampet. So these are the areas where you have, and you also have the Venkatapuram and the Hanmakonda inscriptions, or the 1,000 pillar inscriptions of the Kakatiyas. So these are all the areas where you can find the Polavasa Raja dynasty inscriptions. So another small splintered dynasty which had ruled for some time. And next, one important dynasty happens to be the dynasty of the Kakatiyas. And here you have the inscriptions. I have given you the list of areas where you find the inscriptions. You have the Bayaram, you have the Mangalu, you have the Malakapuf, and you have the Chandaputla, Kandavalli, Hanamakonda, Palampet, Sangyaram, Kazipet, all these regions, you have inscriptions. So again, as I've been insisting, they speak of the political history, and the social history and the cultural history. And then we have the Mansuri Nayakas, who are the subordinate kings of Kakatiyas. And you have the Vilasa Kaparvan, you have Kalacheruvu, you have Polavaram, you have Pentapadu, you have Ganapeshwaram, you have Pillalamari inscriptions. So all these inscriptions, we can have an idea of the Mansuru Nayaks, who were the subordinate kings of Kakatiya. And then you have the Cheraku Reddy dynasty, who were the subordinate kings of the Kakatiyas. And the areas where you find their inscriptions are the Jalalapuram and Velapuru and Anirbath. These are the three regions where you find the subordinate kings of the Reddy kings, or the Cheraku Reddy kings, who are the subordinate kings of the Kakatiyas, who have ruled in this particular region. And similarly, you have the Malayala dynasty, who are the subordinate. All these dynasties, after the downfall of the Kakatiyas, you have several subordinate kingdoms proclaiming their regional independence and becoming independent. So all these dynasties, the Maysala dynasty and the Cheraku Reddy dynasty, are all the subordinate kingdoms which have proclaimed regional independence after the downfall of the Kakatiyas. So you have the Buddhapura inscription, which speaks of the Malayala dynasty. And then you have the Gona dynasty, again the subordinates of the Kakatiyas. And you have inscriptions available at Bahadurpura. You have Kuppam Bikas, and you have Gunadeshwara temple inscriptions. So all these inscriptions speak of the various subordinate kingdoms which had emerged in this particular region after the downfall of the Kakatiyas. And then you have the Yadava dynasty also, who are also the subordinates of the Kakatiyas. And you have the inscriptions available at Panagallu and Patarala Padu. These are the two regions where you find the inscriptions available for the Yadava dynasty. Yadavas were slightly important on the contemporary when you're trying to understand. They were more powerful than some of the most kingdoms which had emerged after the downfall of after the downfall of the Kakatiyas. So the next dynasty, important dynasty, is the Kayastha dynasty, and they were also the subordinates of Kakatiyas. And the region where you find inscriptions is the Chandapu Patla inscription. So this is only inscription that is available about the Kayastha dynasty. Similarly, another dynasty which you have, which is again a subordinate dynasty of the Naga Kakatiyas, is the Naga dynasty. And inscriptions for this dynasty, for the study of this dynasty, is available at Anantagiri inscription. So I have given you a list of almost all the important dynasties. These are the dynasties which have ruled in this particular period, starting from the Satavahanas in a chronological order. So we will be trying to study the history of this region based on these inscriptions that are available to us, and the coins and other sources that are available to us. So we will be trying to take up in the next class, we will be trying to take up the Satavahana dynasty. And here I am showing you the map in which you have the Telangana state. You have the Telangana state being very clearly shown. So these are the sources and the dynasties about which we will have to study in this first unit, which we'll be covering in due course of time. You do not have all the dynasties which I have listed in the table for your semester examinations or for your semester syllabus. For your better understanding, I have just listed out all the dynasties which have ruled in this particular region. So in the next class, we will be starting with the Satavahanas, one of the most powerful dynasties which have ruled almost a major part of the Indian subcontinent from the Telangana region. So we will try to study the society, economy, and administration of the Satavahanas in the next class. Thank you.